Walter, great having you back on Mea Culpa. I haven't seen you,
Let's
at least
go.
since you bombarded me over at that DNC convention, which, by the way, was hysterical. Speaking of which, you really have a very unique way of combining satire, comedy with politics. Just recently, you started this thing called Missing a Backbone for Senator Chuck Schumer, mocking
Yeah.
Schumer and his capitulation on the debt ceiling. By the way, congratulations on making that go viral. How
Thank
did
you.
you
Thank you.
decide on that particular message, and what impact were you hoping for?
Okay, so first off, like just to get it out of the way, a lot of people, your viewers are going to go, well, we shouldn't shut down the government. There's bad things. Let's just put that aside. Like, let's just all agree shutting down the government is bad and there's bad things. That is a negotiating tactic that has been used from, again and again from Republican, Democrat. That isn't, and to abandon that tactic completely without getting anything in return is I can't organize people to show up for the midterms if that's how Democrats want to behave. That's my personal opinion. So I was this became a little bit personal. I met Chuck Schumer in Capitol Hill during the State of the Union. I interviewed him, and his staff members were like, "All right, this you can't post this interview." And even Chuck Schumer was like, "What? Why?" And apparently, the language he was using towards Trump was too caustic and uh, you know, uh, aggressive. And then they made me like delete the interview. And the organizers of the event that I was doing this at, the press event, were like friends and colleagues, and I was like, okay, out of respect to them, sure. And they were just mean about it too. Like his staff is like his staffers are not nice. They're not diplomatic, and we're all on the same side. So that happened during the State of the Union. So that rubbed me the wrong way, like big time. So so that really upset me. Then he does this, and I was like, all right, and I'm seeing, the general consensus amongst people is that we can't organize. Like no one wants to show up for the Democrats if this is the thing, if this is how they're going to behave. So I was like, all right, I have spent years going after MAGA, and I'm happy to also put Democrats in my crosshairs when necessary. And I, just for context, I got out the vote to stop Trump during the election, and I will continue to get out the message to stop Trump repeatedly. But I will also put Democrats in my crosshairs that don't want to, that want to use old tactics and not change and continue to do like all these little wimpy things.
Well,
So I
first of
I
all, you're
thought this was like the
100%
funniest
correct.
way to do. I
It,
was
it,
like, this
def-
is the funniest way to do this. I was like, this is
it
the funniest
definitely
way to go about.
was.
Yeah.
It definitely was. But let me say this. First and foremost, I'm curious how Schumer's team got you to delete it. I wouldn't have deleted it. First of all, I own it. It's my interview. I won't use it right
Well,
now
I
if
didn't delete
you
it. I
ask
didn't
me
delete
not
it.
to.
I just didn't air it just because the organizer of the event was like, listen, you'll screw me over if you do this, and if I wasn't just this was a formal event where Congress people and senators came to be interviewed by influencers. So I didn't just catch them in the hallway. So
Mhm.
there were, and it was a very frustrating time because my number one question to everyone was, yes, we all know Trump's bad. What are you going to do? What is your plan? And a lot of people just wanted to focus. A lot of Democrats just wanted to focus on, oh well, Trump's bad. Let's talk about how Trump is bad. And I'm like, I want to know. I want to know about you, right? Like, oh, tell me about you. Tell me about you and
Mhm.
your plan and how we're building a coalition. What we're, and I want to hear that. I can't use. I can't go back to my audience and say, hey, everyone rally for the special election and the midterms, and the Democrats are, they're really just gonna, do nothing.
Right. Because, by the way, it was Schumer and nine other
Yeah,
Democrats
Schatz,
that ended up, yeah,
Fetterman, Gillibrand.
Gillibrand. Yeah. I mean, there were nine other Democrats that capitulated and went along. I wanted to ask you because there is a ton of anti Schumer now sentiment amongst the Democratic Party, with some of them arguing that Schumer made this deal. These are the ones that are pro Schumer to avoid this catastrophic default of right our debt. I personally don't buy that as a justification, but the anti Schumers are all saying that this was merely just a convenient way for Schumer to avoid a fight with Trump and the GOP. Which way do you think?
I think that there had to have been donors that stepped in and said, "This is not good for us, so it's not good for everyone else." Yeah, so I mean that there's no way, because I mean literally every Democrat was on board. Nancy Pelosi afterwards was like, I mean, these are, you have a lot of Democrats that are very risk averse, saying after the fact, like, what the hell? Like, we were all ready to do this. Maybe they, listen, and maybe they averted government shutdown at the last second, but for him to just capitulate without even pretending like he made a deal with Trump and got
Right.
something in return. Because let's be honest, at the end of the day, President Musk and Trump are going to, get more or less what they want. The elections have consequences. The Democrats' job as the opposition party is to, mitigate that disaster. So to say, that nothing was taken out of that bill because, and is ridiculous to me.
I'm not gonna disagree with you. I agree with
Yeah.
you. A lot of progressives are calling out Schumer's lack of a spine, as you have. I am kind of curious as to where that particular message came from. Is it from something that another Democrat turned around and said? I mean, it's like, what did he lose his spine? Because they're fucking pissed on his willingness to just cave because they believe, as do I, that it weakens the Democratic Party's credibility, especially in standing up to Trump and some of the nonsense that we are hearing coming out of Trump's enablers.
Yeah. And listen, that in that video that I posted with Chuck Schumer, at the end of that is me interviewing the new head of the DNC, Ken Martin, and he said, basically that Democrats need to do something different, because it is known that, yes, while the Republicans can be shameless, the Democrats are known to be spineless. That is from the head of the DNC in an interview with me. Just straight. I mean, I appreciate Ken Martin for his candor with me. He was just straight up when I asked him about that. And so, I mean, this isn't like, I mean, and that's a sentiment amongst people that are, not, maybe they're not, locked into it. That's just this is sort of the word on the street of, all right, they're doing this awful stuff, but the Democrats are going to be, helpless to stop them. And that's a long-standing, long-running narrative, that predates Merrick Garland.
Mhm. But Ken Martin really is taking on a very difficult role at this time because everything that you just described in terms of being spineless and feckless, that was Jamie Harrison. Let's play by the old Democratic playbook from the 1940s, thinking that it's going to, at this point in time, generate a positive result against
Yeah,
someone like Trump, who has rewritten the entire playbook that benefits the Republican Party, benefits him. You know, there is a obligation that I think that the DNC really needs to do other than hit you up for money. Because the other day, I don't know if you got the same email that I did, but it came from the DNC, from Ken Martin.
Yeah.
We're getting destroyed, right? We are what was it? We're becoming disabled. But you can help to stop this, right? Send us a minimum of $15.
Yeah.
That bullshit has to stop. You're not going to beat Trump with money. Let me be very clear. He's got five guys in his pocket right now, starting with Elon Musk, going to Zuckerberg, going to Bezos, and others who can match whatever every single Democrat in the United States gives to the Democratic Party. They could match it without blinking. They can match it, they could double it without blinking. This is not going to be a game that's going to be won based upon how much fucking money that you raise. Oh, yeah, we raised $1 billion. Nobody gives a shit anymore. This is going to be taking the money that you raise, getting out there as you do all the time, Walt. All right. Maybe they should do it a little bit different than your satirical comedy, right? Get out there and start grassroots organizing. Bring people back into the party. Show them that we have a spine, that the Democrats want to fight, that we're willing to fight. Because if not, they would rather take somebody who's willing to fight than somebody that just wants to sit back, even though the one that's fighting is also the one that's breaking the law.
Yeah, and so I mean, there's two sides of the Democratic Party. This is why I feel like there needs to be a Tea Party moment. So the old guard is saying, hey, we need to move further to the right. We need to, throw trans people under the bus, throw all, abandon all this other stuff, and sort of, be more in the middle. The middle is somewhere you just happen to fall. It's not an objective. Being a centrist is, shouldn't be your objective. You wind up as a centrist, basically. You look at it and go, oh, am I a centrist? Oh, I fall in the middle. Look at me. That's not your end goal. So that there's that section of it. It's very establishment. They're grooming Gavin Newsom, to run in a few years. And there's like the rest of the party where they understand a lot of these issues about healthcare, housing, and you know the Middle East, and they like there's an awareness that what we're doing is not working. And I feel like that section's sort of getting drowned out. Like no one's listening to that because the people at the top have their slick advisors that helped Hillary lose and helped, other constituents lose their midterm elections. And,
Help Kamala
now,
Harris lose the
yeah,
same the
they have
same
like
bunch of
this record
assholes.
of losing, and they're taking, listen, I have access to data. While we were on the campaign trail, I had access, I had the same data that they did. Okay. I had data that, mirrored the election results and that said Trump was going to win and this is how he's going to win and these are the demographics. Their reaction to that data was, to run around with Liz Cheney and Mark Cuban. My reaction to that data was much different, right? Like um, I've interviewed a ton of Democratic, Congress people, like in Pennsylvania, like there are interviews where I had to sort of beat it out of them about like what the Inflation Reduction Act has materially done to Rust Belt areas and how it reopened factories, right? And like
Hmm.
it just was, they did not know. I mean, not that they didn't know, they knew this, but they weren't. They were thinking, well, you know, our advisors say we should just hit these key points, and the data shows this. Whereas I'm like, dude, you have a factory in your district that is reopened because of the Inflation Reduction Act. Like, why does it take a 15-minute conversation for me to get this out of you? right? Like, you know, like Biden took on Ticketmaster for Christ's sake. You know how marketable that is?
right? It's so true. But look, at the same time, we got what we got. And as I say to people, there was too many that sat on the sideline. They didn't like Kamala. They didn't like the Democratic messaging. By the way, I didn't like the Democratic
I
messaging.
don't like
And
it
as
either.
many times as I tried to reach out, yeah, I'm a fan of Mark Cuban. I know Mark. He's a smart guy. He's a successful guy. He's actually a nice guy. Taylor Swift, number one, probably, or one of the top three ever in the history of music. By putting them out there, or Liz Cheney, who commands a very good message, here's the problem. She's only new to the message for what? 6 months, a year since Trump basically fucked up her entire reelection? Seriously, right? I don't agree with Dick Cheney or most anything that she says. So it's very hard for me to sit and to listen to her now taking a completely contrarian position. But we got what we got. And let me tell you what we got. You got now Jeffrey Goldberg, editor in chief journalist over at The Atlantic, who somehow or another gets included, as Trump will say, on a call. It's not a call, it was a chat. All right. That was started by Mike Walls, National Security Advisor, on operational war plans that were going to be taking place like within the next half hour to hours against the Houthi rebels in Yemen.
Yeah,
Now,
no, but
let me
I
tell you
love, I
this.
love, I
Let
love
me just
the progression of that, where it's like they were at first they denied it, and then they were like, "Well, no, it did happen, but there wasn't any classified information that we shared.
right,
We only
right,
shared the planes that we were using, the times that we were going to be doing the bombings,
the
and
location.
the location, how and why we're doing it, how we want to do it before Israel does it, so we look strong." Like it was,
I mean, it's it,
and
it's it, it's beyond. But here's really the question: because these leaked chat messages reveals, at least to me, and I am not a military guy. The closest to the military I got was 3 days in the Boy Scouts, and then I was asked
yeah.
to leave. Right? It reveals to me some pretty alarming vulnerabilities. We're going to get into the whole thing about the denials, the deflection, the fact that the Republicans are trying to make the American people feel like we're stupid by even asking them questions about what took
Oh
place
yeah.
here. But the question that I want to ask you, they're trying to make it seem as if though this leak was some sort of an act of patriotism. Again, I am baffled by, because I see this leak as a reckless endangerment of our national security. And that, my friend, is the single most important job that any president owes to the American people. All the rest of it is secondary. The first and primary responsibility of the president of the United States is to ensure national security.
Yeah. It's
Where do you where do you
it's just
stand?
like it's
What's
a
your
bad
take?
joke. Yeah. I mean that was like that was I so first off, I'm happy that Goldberg brought it up now and not he didn't do like a book and like have it be part of his book deal 6 months later. I'm glad he
Hmm.
brought it up right now, and so we could all enjoy this like insanity. Uh, so first off, respect. Secondly, like to have him actually admit that was them was major because it was like at first they were like, wow, like they tried their usual thing of like, where they gaslight everyone. And then then it was like, no, this is actually dead serious. There had to have been multiple Republicans in Congress and Senate being like, what the hell is this? that must have been just upset enough that something, they had to have just admitted that this was their, they had to like own that as a mistake. Not that they've owned anything, they just had to basically admit that that was in the group chat, that that was a
Yeah, I
real
mean,
group chat.
when I was listening to Jeffrey Goldberg turn around and they asked him, when you first got this chat, when you were placed onto this chat, what did you think as you were reading this information?
Yeah,
And he thought that this was a farce, that somebody was punking him, that this was
yeah,
some AI generated bullshit that was designed to look good to kind of screw him up as a editor in chief, as the journalist of the Atlantic, to publish information which was inaccurate and so on. And so he sat back with it until he found out, holy shit, you got F-16s over there in Yemen right now bombing this area. You have drones that are attacking this area. And he's like, oh my God. And he's reading through it and he's like, this is freaking real.
yeah. I honestly, I mean, think about if it happened to you or me. You get these WhatsApp, and Signal chat things, and you're like, oh God. You get requests, and sometimes it's spam. You're like, ugh. And I mean, if JD Vance added me to a group chat, and it was about, upcoming war plans, I'd be like, oh, I would probably reject it and, spam block it or report it and be like, yeah, spam, of course. Like, I mean, I guess maybe because he's an editor of the Atlantic and it's not uncommon for people to, use back channels to communicate with him and give, feed him information. I mean, that's your livelihood as a journalist,
Sure.
is
The part,
governments communicating with
Walter,
you. But otherwise, I would have been like the spam
yeah.
block, spam block.
Walter, the thing that bothers me the most is the lack of accountability that any one of them are trying to take. I'm going to start with, of course, the guy at the top, President Trump, where he turns around and he goes immediately after Jeff Goldberg, sleazebag, failing Atlantic. We've heard this all 1,000 times before. But the part
Yeah,
that I
and this is
found,
the Atlantic. That is like one
right?
of the most respected news. I mean, everyone respects them. An incredible deal.
But what bothered me the most about Trump's comments, not the fact that he didn't even realize that this was a chat, not a phone call, claiming Jeffrey Goldberg was so bored by the information he dropped off the line. That's not what it's about. He doesn't even understand what signal is. Nobody in that inner circle, his enablers, like what I would have done if I was there. So, we're 45 days into this new administration, and things are more stressful than ever. Family, the job, life. Life. I mean, maybe you're in search of something to help you take charge of your life with full mental clarity. So enhance your march and embrace CBD with Via to experience the powerful benefits of hemp without the high. Look, if you haven't tried them, you're seriously missing out. Whether you need to unwind, to refocus, or just boost your mood, Via is here to enhance your everyday and night. Trusted by over 500,000 happy customers, Via is changing the game in natural wellness, blending powerful, high quality hemp derived ingredients to deliver real, effect driven benefits. So, whether you're looking to sleep better, have better libido, improve your focus, recover, or simply relax, Via has a tailored solution just for you. With products ranging from 0 to high cannabinoid levels, Via lets you fully customize your experience to fit your needs. So whether you're looking to support your daily wellness routine, enhance your focus and clarity, or just unwind with deep relaxation, Via has you covered. I mean, from their award winning effect forward gummies to their premium indoor grown THCA flower and calming drops, every Via product is thoughtfully crafted, made with organic, lab tested hemp sourced from trusted, independent, American owned farms. And the best part? Via legally ships across the USA, discreet, direct to your door with no medical card required and backed by a worry-free guarantee. I mean, look, I've tried the THC-free gummies for sleep. And let me tell you, anyone who knows me knows that I've had sleep issues my entire life. I mean, these 4 a.m. wake ups, they just don't cut it when you're my age. I mean, where has this product been my entire life? So let me share some real quick points about Via. All right, first, it's an industry leader with over 500,000 customers served to date. Two, it's made in the USA, farmed and crafted with care in the United States. Three, award-winning service, experience their top-notch customer support. Four, the quality of the ingredients, sourced from the finest hemp for your peace of mind, plus lab tested and certified. And fifth, affordable and accessible. These premium products will fit your budget. So, not sure where to start? Take Via's product finder quiz to get personalized recommendations tailored to your needs. I mean, it will take you less than 60 seconds to complete. So if you're 21 plus, treat yourself to 15% off and get a free gift with your first order using our exclusive code Cohen at viahemp.com. That's VIIAHEMP.com. Plus, enjoy free shipping on orders over $100. And if you're new to Via, get a free gift of your choice. And after you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. So please support our show and tell them that we sent you. Enhance your everyday with Via. I would give him a 3-minute tutorial on what Signal is. I have Walter Masterson on my Signal. I have you on it. Why? Because I have your contact information. You have mine. I accepted you. You accepted me. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
If I want to send a private chat to you, so be it. Mike Walls had Jeffrey Goldberg's information in his system. He had it in there. Maybe he was in the past leaking information to him. I don't know. All I know is the way Trump is describing it, that somehow Jeffrey Goldberg managed to infiltrate some of their phones or what have you and got himself included in this conversation, which by the way is not, and it's not classified. As far as anybody's told me, it's not classified. All right.
His followers are going to think that they're just going to go along with what Trump said.
That's the
They're
question I
gonna
wanted to
go, well,
ask you.
Jeffrey Goldberg, he infiltrated this
Right.
group chat on his own, obviously, and he's an enemy of the state. He should be in jail.
And that's the question I wanted to ask you. That's exactly the point I wanted to make. There are, and I don't think it's the 77 million that voted for him. I still think it's that 30% of the Republican base that constitutes MAGA. No matter what gets done, no matter how egregious, how stupid, how reckless, they're still going to go
They're going to
along with
co-sign
the
it. Yeah.
lies. They are. The lies that Trump and Caroline Levitt and Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard, whatever lies that they say, these people, they don't just absorb it, they regurgitate it over and over and over again. And I don't know how the Democrats end up resolving an issue like that. I just don't know what they need to do to combat this sort of brainwashed groups of Americans.
Yeah, I think there's the one thing that I can say is from my experience in talking to everyone across America, there's one thing that's sort of bipartisan is people are yearning for someone that is outside of the two-party system. There are MAGAs out there that like Bernie, that like AOC. AOC holds people in her district that voted for Trump and her. And they said, both of you seem like you're outside the system. She's been an outspoken critic of the Democratic Party. And there are, a good many, people that are conservative that go, you know what, at the end of the day, respect, because, and the same way they, with Bernie, and a handful of other people, where it's this thing of, they want someone that's just not the norm anymore. And that is, there's a strong shift with that. And I think people will, I think if we can get someone, personally, I think if you progressives should just not even run as Democrats. Everyone should run as independents, and then maybe caucus with the Democrats, and then just to wipe that branding off of them
Hmm.
in certain areas, because then it's like, it's like, what are you going to say? And I think that if the Democrats were to define themselves, like when you can define yourself, those anti-trans and bathroom ads don't work, right? Like the ones they run, in the swing states and the purple districts, where this candidate's going to let trans men in the women's bathroom, and there's these silly ads. They don't work against like someone that who they are.
Right.
And you mentioned grassroots. I think the Congress people that I spoke to that came from the Working Families Party, that work closely with Working Families Party, I think messaging wise, were the most with it people that I spoke to. And it was like fresh talking points. It was a real conversation. I feel like they could connect, and they weren't just spouting, regurgitating talking points and sounding like this sort of, lockstep party. Uh,
One of the other big concerns, Walter, that I'm hearing from DC right now is obviously this leak of the sensitive information under Trump's watch speaks volumes for the lack of professionalism and the level of incompetence by the administration that Trump put forth. What they're turning around and saying to me is, we at least now know what this information is about. We have the documents, at least some of them, if not most of them, thanks to Jeffrey Goldberg, who I do believe is a patriot for not releasing any of that information.
yeah,
What
that's
they're
the
more
CIA
concerned about,
agent.
Walter,
Yeah.
right? But what they're more concerned about is what other signal chats are taking place amongst this group of idiots, right? And knowing how Signal works. So, to my listeners that don't know how it works, it's kind of like a Snapchat where you could set the length of time that that chat stays live before it just disappears on both sides. That's the problem, because we may never know what other information that they were doing on chats that now countries like Russia will actually have. When Steve Witkoff, who was attached as
Wasn't he
part of
in
this chat,
Russia?
he was in the Kremlin when it happened. And I want people to know that I have been told this, and it has been confirmed by some FBI agents many years ago, that the second you, as a foreigner, end up in Moscow, your phones are somehow cloned. That they actually have the ability to get into, because you are now on their wireless service, right? The international wireless service, they have the ability to download your information, which means that anything that was on that phone, Russian intelligence has access to. That's the danger.
Yeah. I mean, they, they could do that. Yeah. I mean, you could also do that in China and US and everything, and clone phones, look at things. But yeah, I mean, especially if you are a head of state, if you're part of the Trump administration, and yeah, and you're in the Kremlin, there, I mean, it's not even, you should just assume. I mean, this is like a recycled Hillary conversation. I mean, she had her private email server. She, used her phone that wasn't set up correctly when she was, in China. And I mean, there's times when they could have easily, or when they probably did, just rip all of the data that she had in her phone and look at it. Just because, I mean, she's, letting your grandmother set up her iPhone on her own. It's that's the That's how I looked at it. I mean, this is from the lock her up crowd. The Hillary was using a private email server, and we never heard the end of it. The butthurt emails gang, and
right?
now this is like, and now this is like an egregious. I mean, okay, let's just imagine if Hillary Clinton added someone to a group chat about bombing places and everything. I mean, they'd be like, they'd be burning down, per house at this point.
It's true. But meanwhile, not Trump. He actually
Yeah.
is using this leak to attack the media and journalists, right?
Yeah.
You see this as part of a broader effort to undermine public trust in government and government
Yeah.
institutions.
Yeah. I see this. Yeah. I mean, and he's using their distrust of, it's like, oh, well, they're the enemy of the state. They're the Atlantic, right? This is the guy who has OAN is the, official, they've got official access. OAN and what, Newsmax?
Newsmax and also, of course, Fox.
Fox, OAN, Newsmax. And then the Atlantics, I mean, they say stuff that I'm not crazy about sometimes. I mean, they sort of their politics kind of runs the gamut of, very like liberal to conservative libertarian, and it, has that sort of that range. I'm not, there are times I've read stuff there that I'm not particularly crazy about what they have to say,
Yeah,
but
you and me
I
both.
respect them as an institution. They're like a very long running institution, committed to being, somewhat apolitical and not having like this bias. To accuse them of being like, the Daily Sun or something like that is just hilarious.
You know
You know,
what's hilarious, Walter? I remember when you were trolling George Santos, and you know, he is his upcoming trial is, I think, merely like a week or two away,
oh wow.
which to me, I mean, a lot of people have completely forgotten about Santos, but I mean, it is truly the culmination of one of the most absurd political scandals in my recent memory. I wanted to ask you, what do you think it says about the GOP's moral compass that he was allowed to even remain in Congress for as long as he did? And I bring that up not because I want to attack George Santos. In fact, I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago about maybe doing each other's podcasts. He's literally out so that he could get his podcast going. That's literally in the order by the
I
court.
was on his
I'm blown.
podcast.
What's that?
I went on his podcast. It's unwatchable. It's so First of all, his podcast is unwatchable. Whoever invested in his podcast, I mean, if you're a conservative and you have a podcast, there's dollars waiting for you because he has it's a dedicated studio in the financial district, dedicated financial studio, salaried position. He has a salaried co-host, full production staff, and he does not get any numbers. He gets nothing. He was like, "Oh, well, I'm bigger on Spotify," and I'm a creator. I can look. I can just look and be like, "No, you're not big on Spotify at all." Even without like looking at like, internal data or something. Like I just did like a cursory glance and I was like, "No, you do not get numbers on Spotify. You don't get them on YouTube. You get them literally nowhere." And
But Walter, the reason I'm asking you this question is because, again, the GOP, they fought. Many of the GOP members fought. Listen, the process will have to work its way out. There's a court system, there's a process for this thing. We're talking again about the leak of classified information of war operational plans. But I don't hear a single GOP member turn around and saying, okay, you know what? We allowed Santos. That was a mistake, right? It was an absurd political scandal. It was the weirdest case about a guy who was stealing money and what have you. This is one that puts you, your family, this country's national security at risk. At some point in time, someone's ass has to get fired. I believe it will be Mike Walls. That's who I believe. Though many are calling, at least on the Democratic side, for it to be Pete Hegseth. I mean, Pete Hegseth in those texts identify aircrafts, locations, drones, times, and so on. That is an ongoing war, right? That's an ongoing military operation against the Houthis. And you got to say to yourself, we all acknowledged at the very inception that this guy is absolutely wrong for the position, but he is now proving it.
I mean,
Compare
this is a
this
guy
with
who
Santos.
already, this is already, I mean, Hegseth, he was the guy that was doing a press conference, and he has this little, tumbler full of scotch or whiskey. Everyone's like, "Are you drinking during a press conference?" Right? And maybe he wasn't, but like, would you take a short glass that's filled with something that looks like whiskey and just be like, "Meh," you know? I mean, that this is on the heels of that, and to have that, so I love it. So you're talking about Santos, and does it show a bigger problem? I think, yeah. I mean, it's sort of this loyalist thing where you have people, they're not necessarily competent, but they're loyal, right? They're going to be loyal to Project 2025. They know what they need to get done. These are the objectives of Project 2025. Will you get those done? Will you say yes to the president? Great. And it doesn't matter. The competency is second to loyalty. Because I mean, Hegseth got approved because Trump's not going to make that same mistake that he made his first administration, right? Remember his first administration, he wanted to send in tanks against protesters, and he had very far right conservative members of his administration that were fine with separating children and all these
Mm-hmm.
other horrific things that had been done. And they were like, actually, constitutionally, we can't find a justification for that. We found good justification for separating families at the border and putting them in all types of pain and castrating them and all this stuff. But this actually can't find a constitutional basis for it. And then he lost his temper and said, "You know what? I'm not picking people like this again. I'm only picking people that agree with me." So you're going to get people whose competency comes second.
Yeah, well, it's true. And you know what? Knowing Trump as long as I do and knowing him as well as I do, I'm going to tell you what I think the whole problem is here. I'm going to sum it up in a nutshell. Trump has managed to normalize dishonesty. There's no doubt in my mind. He has
Yeah,
managed to normalize dishonesty, not just to his base, but to the entire GOP and to many independents and Democrats as well, centrist Democrats, because they're just tired. They're tired of all of the dishonesty that goes on. I'll tell you what the problem is with this normalization of dishonesty. It emboldens lower level politicians to follow suit. You sit there, you listen to Republican members of Congress. They fucking lie to you right to your face. Whether it's while they're on, whether they're on the dais there in the House, right during a hearing, whether it's in the halls of Congress on television for their 5 minute interview with Trump to show, hey, look, Donald, look over here. No, over here. I'm a loyalist. Listen to what I'm saying. I'm following all of your talking points, right?
yeah.
Biden's the worst. America's a shithole, right? These MS-13, these Tren de Araguas, right? They're all 100%. We don't have to give you names. We just did our due diligence. They're all off now in Venezuela, and we're only paying $6 million to house them. Look at how brutal that we were. Yeah, but Mr. President, quick question for you. There was one guy, at least that we know for 100% certainty, that was a coach of a professional soccer team. and that wasn't a tattoo, an MS-13 or a Trenderagua tattoo. It was actually the tattoo of the team, and I think it was like Real Madrid, right? How do we get him back? Stop. Don't worry about it. He was not. He may have been part of both. I mean, they just lie to you, and they lie, and they lie. And
Well,
again, the
they know
goal.
that the media right now is siloed, and that I mean, I think this is a problem with the media, and it's a larger problem with progressives in general. So, like, first of all, they know, they're like, I can just lie to you. It's not going to reach my base. Like, my base isn't going to care. My district isn't going to care, right? You're a Republican congressperson. You're like, you know what? This you can say whatever you want, and conservative media is not going to come at you for it because you're towing the line. So, and then here's on the other side, you have progressives thinking, well, this is the end for them. It's like, no, they're silent. Their people are never going to hear about it. They're not going to care about it or anything. And, we walk around thinking that things are going to get so bad that people are just going to realize, oh, things are bad and it's because of Trump. We should do something. And I don't think that's the case. I think, the information is so siloed. They own the airwaves. They have,
Yep.
right. I mean,
This episode of Mea Culpa is brought to you by Graza, my new favorite olive oil. It's fresh, it's never blended, and it comes from a single type of olive, the Picual, straight out of Jaén, Spain, where over half of the world's olive oil is produced. So why Graza? Single origin goodness, that's why. Only one olive from one region. No mysterious blends. That means a traceable, a fresher product without mixing in any low grade or unknown oils. It's super fun. It has squeeze and spray bottles too, so there's no more messy tins or drippy spouts. Just aim, squeeze, and go. I mean, there are 3 types for any task that you have. One, they have something called frizzle. That's their newest, with a higher 490-degree Fahrenheit smoke point, which is perfect for frying, crisping, or grilling. Sizzle at 410 degrees Fahrenheit, which is an everyday cooking oil for roasting, marinating, and sauteing. Then they have something called drizzle, which is a bold, a punchy finishing oil that you sprinkle on your salads, you dip your bread in, or even you top it off on your ice cream. Look, let me be clear. My daughter is the actual chef in the house, and she uses olive oil on everything from pastas to preparing steak. I mean, not only does this cook well, it smells delicious. Plus, as a healthy eater, Graza's extra virgin oils, they are loaded with those heart and brain friendly polyphenols. So it's good for you. Look, so here's what you get. You get 10% off your first order on Graza's site. But I personally suggest grabbing the trio. That's all the 3 squeezy bottles, the sizzle, the frizzle, and the drizzle, so that you're set for every style of cooking. So head right now to graza.co and use code Cohen to get 10% off of Trio, which includes again sizzle, frizzle, and drizzle, and get to cooking your next chef quality meal. Again, head to Graza, GRAZA.co, and use code Cohen, COHEN, to get 10% off the Trio. And I love saying it, sizzle, frizzle, and drizzle. So get cooking now.
they own the airwaves. They have all of, they're the biggest microphone right now, and it's going to get spun in a different way, right? They will find a new villain of, trans people, immigrants, the deep state, so on and so forth. And it's not, it's the progressives walk around, establishment, Democrats, liberals, we all walk around thinking that, the truth's eventually just going to win out.
Right. And it's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
And then,
But I'll tell you, but you brought something up that I think we do have to touch on. And we have coming up 3 special elections for seats right
yeah,
now
Wisconsin, Supreme Court.
well,
So the first one's
well,
Wisconsin.
no. I'm talking about like the April 1. There's special election that's coming in Florida for 2 congressional
Oh, yeah.
seats. One that I believe was held originally by Gates, and the other one by Mike Waltz. Then there's also, I think, another one in, I'm going to make it up, maybe Nevada, that's coming up in September. There's a very slim majority held by the GOP. If these 3 seats, I think if the 2 seats end up going to Democrats, you have a complete flip of the House in terms of power.
Well, they need
So,
3. Don't they need 3?
yes, but I think that there's one Republican that is consistently voted with Democrats. I'm not sure, but it's definitely 3. All right.
Hmm.
My question I wanted to ask you: you think Democrats have a chance of breaking through this influence, this massive microphone that you were just talking about?
I'm sort of fingers crossed on that one. I mean, they're trying to raise money. You have the SCOTUS race in Wisconsin, and like you said, remember, it's like, we're trying to raise money, but Elon Musk gave $19 million to that Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. Just injected 19 million, which is that is an insane amount of money for a Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. It's not even federal. This is a state Supreme Court race. And so, I mean, there needs to be some sort of people power, and the way that they need to change the way that they are organizing to get things done. Because the way that they've been doing it is not going to work. To just say like, hey, we're middle of the road is not going to work. And we're not going to say anything too crazy. Uh, we're not going to, we're going to say stuff that's like focus tested and stuff. I'm hoping that the 3 candidates are not doing like, going the establishment route and trying something new, because it just doesn't, you know, yeah, it's frightening.
So, how do activists like yourself counter these efforts and ensure fair participation in the special election?
I've just been telling people to get out to vote for it. I've been explaining, what's at stake with regards to some of these elections. At the same time, I can get out the vote. I can do it, but I need, like the Democrats need to meet all of us halfway and show, hey, we're fighting, right? We're doing so. I mean, listen, if it was if it was the reverse situation, let's say Donald Trump was Chuck Schumer. I mean, Donald Trump would be, doing anything he did would just be, viva la revolution. And, it would be, the piece de resistance. He would,
Mhm.
anything he did, he'd be marketing it as like, check out what I did today. And I feel like, Democrats have consistently had like a terrible outside game. And and they need to show that there needs to be like, hey, we're fighting, we're actually doing something,
Well,
and
yeah, but Walter, there's a bigger problem here, right? Trump has somehow managed to create this massive disinformation machine
yeah,
and
yeah.
to appeal to
We talked about that
Americans'
the first time I
prurient.
was on your show. That was
Yep.
my biggest problem. The first time I was on your show in what, 2021, I was like, there was this disinformation machine out there and no one knows about it. And
No, Walter. No,
yeah,
stop 1
it's
second. No, stop. Everybody knows about it. They
now
just
they
don't give a
do.
shit. Right. I mean,
The-
I want to just give you an example. You turn around and you see this professionally edited, filmed, um, almost like docu clip on the Venezuelan migrants that were being deported and sent to an El Salvadorian prison. A fucking brutal experience. It's a brutal prison. And they show it was so crazy. You have these men that are stripped, and there was some women in there too, by the way, that was stripped down into these white boxer shorts and a white t-shirt. They are basically have their head shoved in between their legs as they're handcuffed and shackled, basically with their nose almost touching the floor. If that was me, my back would break. I have a bad lower back. I mean, I don't know how they're even doing that. They shove them, they shave their heads, they shave, all their facial hair, the whole 9 yards, and it's being done to calming, soothing music. To
For the
me, it
ASMR.
reminded me so much. It reminded me so much of like World War II propaganda during the Nazis when they would have musicians playing the violin and the cello and so on as the new entrees were coming into Auschwitz. These acts by Trump and his administration, all right, is condemned, at least by Democrats, as inhumane, politically motivated, and so on. The problem, though, is you see Trump and Tom Harmon and this administration as fearless, as fighters, and getting shit done, despite the fact if you compare apples to apples under the Biden administration or even under the Obama administration, more was done there than what's going on here. They just don't do it the same way. That to me is the problem.
Yeah, I mean, they're not doing it in the most painful way possible. They weren't. I mean, yeah, under the Biden administration, it was, he supposedly deported more people. I mean, that's also because of what, Title 42, where you can just, you can deport people like 50 times because they're, they're going to come back because they're not being processed under Title 42. That's the possibility. But I mean, yeah, it's they're not like publicizing it. And that is actually, you're right, because here's like this core part. So Biden was deporting more people. Now, that's why I didn't like Biden. That's something I disliked about him. But I thought MAGA would like him, right? I thought, I'm like,
Right.
well, he's deporting a ton of people. I thought MAGA would like this. No, he's not
No.
deporting enough, right? Now, another reason I didn't like Biden, he approved a record amount of drilling permits. I didn't like him for that. There was the Willow Project. There was all these things, record amount of drilling permits. However, he was being bashed because he wasn't drilling enough. I mean, when I show people the numbers, I have sat with MAGA and said, these are the numbers. This is how much Trump drilled. This is how much Biden drilled. Biden drilled way more. Like, he was drill baby drilling. To say that he wasn't drilling enough is, a very, very hard thing to say, given that there was, like, the numbers were right there. You
Walter,
can't
it's
dispute those.
all part of Trump's disinformation. It's part of the GOP disinformation
Well, yeah, and
platform.
that's my biggest problem, is that there's no, I'm just a person who makes TikToks and YouTube videos. There needs to be something institutionally that is, fighting this disinformation, that's like aware of it and running counter to it, because it's not, this disinformation was allowed to fester. Like, undocumented immigrants pay, what, $98 billion in taxes every year.
Hmm.
They don't know that. Uh, Biden drilled more. They don't know that. Biden,
Created more
deported.
jobs. There were more
Yeah,
businesses coming back to America. There was better
yeah,
relationships with our allies, better relationships even with our
yeah.
adversaries than they want to make. But all this can, let me end our show because the hour goes by unfortunately too quickly. All right. I want to bring you for this, right? Because I want to stay on this disinformation crap. Right now, Russian propaganda is thriving in US social media spaces.
Oh
You
yeah.
go onto X, you go onto all of these social media platforms, the Russian propaganda is everywhere. So I wanted to ask you, as a creator, have you noticed an uptick in disinformation being spread by Trump supporters of this Russian propaganda? And how do you think
Oh
that
yeah.
you, as a creator, me, as a media sort of personality, and so many others, what do we do to respond?
I mean, there needs to be something done, like, on an institutional level, because it is just so, it's like a barrage, and they're very targeted with it. they're not just targeting, they're targeting the left, the right. They know what to say to make left-wing people, because there's plenty of left-wing people that are anti-Ukraine, and there's plenty of MAGA people that are viciously anti-Ukraine, and the narrative of gets really lost in it, because it's like Ukraine's an independent country. Putin in an interview with Tucker Carlson straight up said, like, this is our land. Like, historically, this is ours. And they, yeah, I mean, and it's like a barrage, and it's very insidious. I actually can't tell you how to fight against it, because it is very insidious, and it plays on people's hatred of, you know, NATO, and people's hatred of, the establishment. And it makes it seem like, this is, it makes it seem like Putin is the good guy in all of this, which is absurd. And it's playing on sort of this, people are kind of fed up on every side of the United States imperialist actions. So to play on, because the United States is, it's an imperialist actor. And for, but then right now they're saving Ukraine from it. They've been saving Ukraine from just a full-on genocide. And what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank would be happening to Ukraine if it wasn't for the United States, mitigating that with Russia. Um, so, it's hard to give that narrative to people and have them be like, rah rah, United States, because there's a lot of information people need to understand, like that there's a lot of history people need to know to like explain this. And it doesn't help when Vladimir Putin is paying American influencers what, like 10,000, 100,000 a month to say good
Hmm.
things about Russia.
Sure, sure. And
I mean,
that we allow it to happen. Could you
I mean,
imagine?
I was looking at what like Tim Pool and the other guys were getting paid, and I was like thinking to myself, I was like, if someone came to me with like 100, 250,000 a month, say nice things about Russia, and I'm like, would I like, I've turned brand deals down before, but I'm like, God, I mean, how do you even say no to that as a little,
Well, that's
conservative
unfortunately
creator
the
with no morals?
that's unfortunately what Elon Musk has, and that's money. And so, money goes a long way. Walter, thank you so much for
Oh my
joining me,
God, it's
my
always a
brother, on
pleasure.
Mea Culpa. I will be seeing you hopefully very, very soon. I do know that in the upcoming weeks, there's going to be a whole slew of town halls here in New York. So I hope to see you at them.
Let's go to a town hall together.
Done.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
speak to you soon,
And
my brother.
everyone, hey, everyone, follow me on YouTube. YouTube
They're
Walter
hysterical.
Masterson. All right.
Walter,
Thanks,
thank you, my
Michael.
buddy. I'll see you soon.